Hello and welcome to this videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Well, we're going to take a journey through the Madhouse today, and the world is a madhouse. And once you realize that, everything starts to make sense. It's run by psychopaths for psychopaths, and psychopaths fight psychopaths with the people in general crushed in the middle. And it happens all over the world, and it happens generation after generation because, well, the world's a frickin' madhouse. And there can be no greater example currently of that than what is happening on the French coast at Calais. For those around the world who may not have seen as much of that story as we have in Britain, what has happened is this. Countries have been bombed, manipulated into civil war, had their resources stolen, and their societies manipulated by the countries of the West who love freedom. And as a result of that, not surprisingly, who wouldn't, they have tried, with their families often, to make the perilous journey to what they believe is a new land of prosperity. This, for those at Calais, is perceived to be Britain. And so they have taken their lives and their families' lives into great danger often by crossing the Mediterranean in terrible situations and great dangers because of the craft they have been traveling on, orchestrated by ruthless, psychopathic people traffickers. They have then made this journey across Europe to Calais, and now they are trying, through whatever means they can, to get across to Britain. This has created fantastic disruption on both sides of the channel. Apparently, the last I read, some 6,000 lorries or trucks have been lined up on the British side, which can't get through the hold-ups into Europe. Businesses are being disrupted, some no doubt destroyed, by not being able to get supplies and customers to their business because of all the hold-ups. And so what you have, as frickin' usual in the Madhouse, is that two groups of victims of the psychopaths are having different consequences of the psychopathic actions. And then the psychopaths try to play the victims off against each other, so we might just ignore the cause of it. And so we have a situation this week where the British Prime Minister, the truly vacuous David Cameron, has been making speeches about the problem of swarms of people heading for Britain and how he will not let them in and he will deal with it and we must be strong. No mention that fricking arsehole, along with Obama and Hollande and all these other people, the French leaders of the time, have been fundamentally responsible for creating the problem now in need of a solution. And if you go deeper into the agenda, it's worth remembering this. Manipulating and redirecting harmony is extremely difficult. What do you mean you want to change this and change that? Everything's fine. Go away. Manipulating chaos, manipulating fear, manipulating mayhem. Piece of cake. And does anyone really think that the psychopaths weren't well aware, especially those in the shadows, that drive and puppeteer these Cameron, Obama, Bush puppets, that they never knew that as a result of what they'd done and are continuing to do in North Africa and the Middle East, that what is happening now in terms of migrants and dispossessed people was not the inevitable outcome. But we must be diverted from these conclusions by stories like this. Calais migrant crisis. Cameron warns Britain is no safe haven. My goodness, he's so strong. Britain will become, or not become, because he's strong, a safe haven for migrants in Calais, David Cameron has warned after hundreds continued their attempts to reach the UK. The Prime Minister warned illegal immigrants would be removed from the UK as migrants told the BBC they remain determined to reach Britain. Mr Cameron was speaking after people gathered for a third night at fencing at the Channel Tunnel freight terminal. More than 3,500 people have tried to get into the tunnel terminal this week. And, irony of ironies, or actually, appropriately, Cameron was speaking in Vietnam, another country I recall that was devastated by the lovers of peace and freedom. Speaking in Vietnam, Mr Cameron said everything that can be done will be done to make sure our borders are secure and make sure that British holidaymakers are able to go about their holidays. Woo, yay, good man. The Prime Minister acknowledged the situation was very testing. Well, the Prime Minister's very testing every time I look at him, because there was a, quote, swarm of people coming across the Mediterranean seeking a better life, but the UK and France were working together, just as they worked together to devastate Libya. Just as these people are working together to devastate Syria and other countries on a global agenda for which they are just puppets, not initiators. They're in the shadows. Another story this week. UK spent 13 times more on bombing Libya than it paid to help rebuild the country. What happens is the psychopaths, who are selected because they're psychopaths by the psychopaths in the shadows to be the visual leaders of the psychopathic agenda, called prime ministers, presidents, and all the rest. They manipulate, lie, orchestrate, make excuses to bomb, slaughter, and devastate country after country. And they spend billions and billions and endless billions. When was the last time you ever heard anyone say, well, we'd like to go to war, but we can't afford it? No, they can't afford basic humanity for people. But war, no problem. And they spend these billions and billions ongoing, and they devastate countries. Then they spend just a little bit more, but far less in total, rebuilding the country, just paying lip service to it, really, not really rebuilding it at all. And then, after having spent all that money, then they tell the people back home that actually we have to have austerity programs because we've got no money and we've got this debt and we've got to do something about it. And it goes on generation after generation after generation. And so we're seeing the same again. And what it means is that because the psychopaths of the agenda control the military with most capability, i.e. NATO, etc., and overwhelmingly they control the perceptions of the media in terms of the way these things are reported, it means that they can do all the things they condemn others for, and worse, and never be collared for it. And yet, the ones who are on the losing side, who do often far less than has been done by the moral West and its psychopathic leaders, they get the consequences. They end up in the International Criminal Court for war crimes, while the biggest war criminals on the planet, are you listening, Tony Blair? And you too, Cameron, get away with it. And you, George Bush. In fact, America and Israel don't even recognize the International Criminal Court, and that's probably good for the court itself, because if the war criminals in the United States and Israel were actually to be prosecuted, the numbers would be so overwhelming the court couldn't cope.